So myself, I'm T.K. Manikandan, Associate Professor, SSM College of Engineering, Kumarapalayam and Namakkal District. So today we'll have a discussion, a brief discussion on the topics, especially on the convection concepts, as well as the hydrodynamic boundary layers and thermal boundary layers, the significance of these layers in practical problems, as well as we will just try to understand the differential form of equations that is required for convection. And at the end of the session, maybe we'll just concentrate on just looking into how to deal with the problems, convection problems, external flow and internal flow problems. So how should we deal with and how to select the Nusselt number, how to select the particular correlation for an application, what is the basis and other things. We will just have a glance on that one, and finally we'll complete the lecture. So a warm good morning to one and all. So convection is nothing but, again, it's a mode of heat transfer where the heat transfer takes place in fluids. Conduction is a heat transfer where the heat transfer takes place in solids, and convection, the heat transfer takes place in fluids, especially in gases and liquids. So it happens between solid and fluid also. So you should always have a bulk fluid motion. So when there is a bulk, when there is not a bulk fluid motion, maybe the heat transfer in fluids can happen because of conduction also. So you need a bulk fluid motion for convection to happen. If the bulk fluid motion is not present, if there is some internal diffusion, maybe there will be a conduction that is happening within of conduction heat transfers taking place in a fluid. We'll see an example later. And this convection is actually governed by Newton's law of cooling, and what we have seen in the conduction chapter, introduction of Newton's law of cooling. And this is the formula we use for calculating the heat transfer rate from any surface. So convection, again, it is given as HA S Ts minus T infinitive, and you can see the unit is watt because it is the rate of heat transfer we deal with and not the energy. So we have joule per second. So every second, how much joules of energy is convected to a surface or into a surface is given by this Newton's law of cooling, where H is the heat transfer coefficient, whose unit is watt per meter square Kelvin. And this H plays a very important role, and this H actually tells the ability of the fluid that can absorb the heat from a given surface or that can dissipate the heat to a given surface. So H is a very important factor. So it is the property, more often we can say it is the property of the fluid. Like what is thermal conductivity? K is the property of that solid, which helps in conducting the heat very fast or very slow. Similarly, H is the factor which decides how fast heat can be transferred from a surface. The fluid plays an important role. So you very well know that if you want to cool a cup of coffee, if instead of keeping it in, if you can keep it on an open table, and at the same time you can also cool it with the help of water. You can put your cup of coffee in the water, cold water, and just you can place it. Maybe the cold water will absorb the heat more quickly than air. So there is the cup of coffee in cold water will cool much faster than the cup of tea, that is our coffee, kept in open in atmospheric air. So when compared to air, water is having more absorption capacity. So I can say heat transfer coefficient of water is higher than air. And also heat transfer coefficient, the H depends on many other factors which we'll be seeing in the later on slides. That's a very important aspect, and in most of the research studies, the people try to increase this H by any means. And let us, once we come into that particular slide, maybe we'll try to understand like how research is being done over there also. So AS is the surface area on which the fluid is in contact, a surface which is at, for example, temperature Ts, and fluid is T infinitive. Here is this Ts minus T infinity, surface temperature minus the fluid temperature. The fluid temperature is represented by the infinitive symbol in convection. So this is the simple formula where you can use this formula to calculate convection heat transfer coefficient from any surface. So if you see this equation again, if you want to increase the convective heat transfer coefficient, then the possibility is you see that what you can do for a given temperature of a surface and given fluid condition and given surface area of a geometry, the only option is only by varying H you can increase the heat transfer. So if you do not, if you want to increase, then you have to increase H. So the dependence of H dependence on the variables is what we have to understand, so that we'll be able to definitely increase H value. So obviously we know natural convection is there and forced convection is there, and on most of the industrial application we go for forced convection. We do not go for natural, because the rate of heat transfer in natural convection is low. Forced convection is very high. So normally we use pumps, we use blowers, etc. We use some external agencies to force the fluid so that convection, forced convection takes place. So this is an example of a free convection. You have a hot plate and you have a surrounding air there, atmosphere is there. So the air comes in contact with the hot plate, and you can see that Q is transferred from the plate to the hot air, and the hot air density decreases and the buoyancy forces create, and the air rises above. And once the air rises above, that place becomes less dense, and the colder air from the surrounding environment, it occupies that space. So this kind of continuous bulk motion of the fluid takes place until the plate it comes in equilibrium with the ambient condition. The reverse can happen when the fluid is at higher temperature and the plate is at lower temperature, in the case of even forced convection. And here it is a forced convection here, and you can see the plate is at 50 degrees Celsius, and you have a fan at 20 degrees Celsius. Maybe you can take an example of electronic chip that is at 50 degrees Celsius, and air ambient air at 20 degrees Celsius, and 5 meter per second velocity is actually, that is what is blown onto the surface of the plate, and so that so this is the place where normally design plays an important role as far as industry is concerned, where they try to optimize the fan size, they try to optimize the velocity of fluid, because what is the most requirement in industries is you do all this energy transfer, but you have to do it at lower cost. So to do it at lower cost, you have to optimize all factors. So if a fan with less velocity and flow rate, if it can absorb the same heat with another fan with high flow rate, it means the fan with less flow rate will consume less electrical power. So obviously our consumption of electricity, the energy of the system will be reduced. So it will be more efficient enough. So that is normally people, when they design even electronic chips, this is what is most important. So one point is, in the given time, the fluid has to remove the heat at a faster rate. At the same time, we have to see that the power what we consume to pump the air is not much high. Our requirement is not only to remove heat, we have to see that it is also efficient. So we have to consider, that is the reason convection, as far as convection is concerned, we have both the, we study about both the fluid as well as the heat transfer simultaneously together. So we have both the properties of fluid velocity, the temperature of the surface, and the fluid viscosity, the density. All these factors are combined with our heat transfer, and we study this. That is the reason convection has got more complex general equations, and all the equations do not have closed form of analytical solutions. And most of the relations what we use in convection to calculate Nusselt number and other things are derived from those are experimental correlations that are derived, and only for a few limited case of flat plate, etc., we can derive the equation. We can derive equations analytically, which will have a closed form of solution. So you can see here again, this is a conduction. This is like, you can see two surfaces. So here what you have to understand is, first slide we have seen it is a natural convection. Second slide it is forced convection. Here, what you try to mean, we try to mean here is, you can see there are two surfaces. One is the gray color surface in the bottom, and you have a rose colored surface kind of in the top. So you consider the bottom maybe as the fluid, solid, and top surface as the fluid. So from fluid mechanics, we know that there is always a no slip boundary condition at the surface. The fluid that is in contact with the solid surface, the velocity is absolutely zero there. So there, how then the fluid layer beyond the no slip condition, that layer, beyond that layer, the fluid is in motion gradually, and there is a lot of shear stress and friction that comes into account, that we will just see in the subsequent slides. So here, what you have to understand, what we have to understand is that at the layer that is adjacent to the solid surface, the heat transfers only by convection. So there is no convection currents. So fluid does not, bulk motion of fluid does not take place. So it is there at that junction of the solid surface, heat transfer is by convection. So in convection, conduction is happening at the solid surface, and away from the solid surface, it is purely by convection. The heat is convected by the bulk motion of the fluid. So you take a hot plate here, for example, at 110 degrees Celsius, and you have a cold plate at 30 degrees Celsius here. And obviously here you can see there is natural, what will happen now is the question is what will happen to the cold plate? What will happen to the cold plate? Will it get heated up or not? That is the first question. So let us consider natural convection. Let us say, for example, let us consider the fluid that is close to the hot plate 110 degrees. So the fluid that gets heated up, and there is no tendency for the fluid to fall down. That fluid will not flow down. So there is no convection current that can be set up because the fluid is hot enough and will tend to rise up. And the fluid at the bottom at 30 degrees Celsius is more denser, so it remains in the bottom. So by convection current, I don't think so there is a possibility of heat transfer. But yet, after maybe a few hours, if you see the cold plate, the temperature would have risen. So how it rises is it's only by the pure conduction between the layer, because here there is no bulk motion of the fluid. So the molecules of the fluid are trapped in between the two plates, and by the kinetic energy or the vibration of the molecules, the heat is transferred from the top plate to the bottom plate. But yet, this is not an efficient way of heating the cold plate. It would take much time. So you need an infinite area, and you need a longer time. So this is in order to understand the concept. Maybe we just try to understand this example. That's it. So here, when we see about convection again here, you have a hot iron block at 400 degrees Celsius, and the fluid is coming from the ambient at 15 degrees Celsius with 3 meter per second velocity is moving over the hot plate, and you can see the velocity profile, which is parabolic in nature. The velocity at the surface of the plate or the hot iron block is absolutely zero because of no slip condition, what we have studied in fluid mechanics. And gradually you can see the velocity of the layers gradually increase, and at one point in time you can see that the velocity becomes equal to the free stream velocity. So when we talk about boundary layer, we consider the height of that height in y direction, where the velocity of the fluid is equal to the free stream velocity. That is what is the boundary layer thickness is called. So here you have the formula as Q is equal to HA into Ts minus T infinitive, where again this is the formula where area is the plan view of that hot iron block, that is from which on which the fluid is in contact, and it absorbs the heat energy. And if you want to find out heat flux, you can see the unit, it is watt per meter square, heat absorbed from unit surface area. So if the surface area of the iron block, say maybe is 10 meters square, and for 1 meter square, what is the heat absorbed is Q dot, that is small q. So small q in heat transfer represents heat flux. When I say flux, it is nothing but the energy absorbed per unit area. And if you multiply by the total area, you get the total energy that has been convected from a given surface. So here you can see that zero velocity I have shown you in this picture. The velocity in the left hand side, you can see it is a uniform velocity or free stream velocity. The fluid approaches a uniform and free stream velocity. And on the right hand side, you can see a complete velocity profile over there. At the surface, it is given as zero velocity at the surface here. So there's a no slip condition here. No temperature jump condition. No temperature jump condition is no slip condition is we understand that the fluid which is in contact with the solid surface will have the temperature because it will be in equilibrium with the solid surface and it will have the temperature of the solid block. The solid block is say at 400 degrees Celsius. Even though the fluid is approaching at 15 degrees Celsius, after steady state it would attain a value of 400 degrees Celsius, close to 400 degrees Celsius on the surface. So that is called no temperature jump condition. So the fluid that is in contact with the solid surface will also have, since it is having zero slip condition, no slip condition, since it is not moving, it will quickly come in thermal equilibrium with the solid surface. So the velocity is zero as far as the temperature is equal to the solid block. So no temperature jump condition at that surface, where only on the surface of the solid block. So these two conditions actually help us to use this equation. You can see this equation, Q convection is equal to Q conduction, where it is happening is minus K dou T by dou Y at Y is equal to 0. So you can see that Y is 0. Y is 0 is again, you can see it's at the surface. At the surface, how the fluid is convected is, the fluid is convected because of the conduction that is taking place at the surface in the stationary layer, and from the stationary layer whatever heat is conducted, that is convected by the fluid that is moving out above that stationary surface. So this equation you can use at the surface, especially at Y is equal to 0. So you can understand that the velocity changes in Y direction as well as the temperature changes in Y direction. So dou U by dou Y is much greater than dou U by dou X. The change in velocity in Y direction is much greater than the change in velocity in X direction. It's because of the friction and shear stress. Similarly, the temperature in Y direction changes higher when compared to the change in temperature in X direction. And thus, from this you can find out H because in the above in the equation given first equation, instead of Q convection, you can use the formula as H into Ts minus T infinitum. So if you want to find out H of any fluid, this is the way of, this is one of the method, one of the way in which you can do some practical measurements where you can find out the dou T by dou Y at the surface, which is very close to the solid block using hot wire anemometer. There's a hot wire anemometer where the temperature in that close vicinity can be, you can find out that temperature between the stationary fluid and the fluid that is moving there. So hot wire anemometer can be used. You can find out dou T by dou Y, and K is the thermal conductivity of the fluid, and Ts is the temperature of the surface which can be measured, and T infinity is the fluid temperature, average fluid temperature. So H can be measured practically by this method. This is one way here. But normally what we do is that we do it from Nusselt surface. We do it from even correlation. We take it from correlations. Already experimentally done correlations are available. Nusselt number is done. Once Nusselt number is there, maybe from Nusselt number we can find out H also. That is the way what we do analytically. So analytically, when we do in our calculations, we try to find out which is the Nusselt number correlation that is suitable for the given problem, and from the Nusselt number we'll try to find out the H value. Next, we'll talk about the boundary layer, which is important. What is the requirement of boundary layer? So boundary layer plays a very important role as far as design of for external flow as well as external flow. It is more important. Boundary layer, velocity boundary is more important in the case of design of cars and objects that are moving in open air. So if, for example, if you see what is boundary layer is, again you can see from the leading edge where x is equal to 0, you can see the velocity profile after a certain distance from 0. You can see the velocity profile gradually it is having a parabolic shape, and that is the laminar boundary layer. That is the laminar, because you know that flow can happen, either the flow can enter as turbulent or it can enter as laminar. Once it enters as laminar, when sufficient length of the system, pipe or plate is available, maybe laminar can convert into turbulent with the help of a transition zone that is in between. And normally transition zone, people have not captured any kind of correlations or equations. So normally in transition zone, we always, when we do only laminar and turbulent and not in between transition zone. So not much accurate data are available to capture this transition zone phenomena exactly. So analytically it is not possible, experimentally it has not been done. So we directly go from laminar to turbulent and saying that this is the Reynolds number range in which the laminar will convert into turbulent. If it is pipe flow, then 2300. Less than 2300 is the Reynolds number, then you have the flow as laminar, and beyond 2300. Actually above 4000 it has to be turbulent, and in between it is transition, but greater than 2300 is also considered nowadays. We treat with the turbulent flow equations. So laminar boundary layer again. So this is the boundary layer. So you can see that pink color line which has been drawn, and that is the layer that forms over the surface when any fluid. So suppose if we have a car, maybe we have a car and we drive a car. When we drive a car, we have the drag force, the fluid that is when a car is moving forward, the fluid that is moving in the opposite, the relative velocity fluid moving in the opposite direction, that forms a boundary layer over the car surface. And this boundary layer that forms on the car surface, it consumes a lot of energy because it does not allow the car to move forward. Because the boundary layer is formed because of within the boundary layer, there is a lot of friction between the surface, that is the solid surface, and the fluid surface. So beyond the boundary layer, the fluid that is moving, that does not know that there's a solid surface in the bottom. So beyond the boundary layer, it is completely inviscid flow. We consider it as inviscid flow. The flow where there is no friction absolutely, that does not affect the performance of the solid surface. So in our case, if our car is moving forward at a particular speed, and when the air is flowing over the car in the opposite direction, we try to minimize, when design of car is done, we try to minimize the boundary layer thickness as low as possible. That is the reason we have the streamlined all this aerofoil structure and all the streamlined kind of shapes to reduce the boundary layer thickness. The lesser the boundary layer thickness, the lesser is the drag that has been induced on the body. So lesser is the drag, so lesser is the power that is consumed against the drag forces. So it means you will have a more efficient system to drive your vehicle forward. So that is one of the important aspects as far as application of boundary layer is concerned, as far as designs of cars and other bodies which move here. So here we talk about here why we then discuss about boundary layer and heat transfer is because you know that velocity plays a very important role. Velocity plays an important role in heat transfer. In convection heat transfer, velocity plays an important role. So we need to understand the velocity behavior and the parameters and the variables, how it varies in the flow, because that plays a very important role in convection. So you have a forced convection. You know that same air is removing more heat when compared to natural convection, when the same air is removing, absorbing less heat. So it is a point like you have to understand that this boundary layer we study because of the simple reason is like we have velocity variations within the boundary layer that is very important to us. So if you see the boundary layer thickness del, okay, let us see that next thing. So even for internal flow we can have, I have shown only for external flow. So you can see I've shown you that 0.99b. So that is delta. Delta is the thickness of the boundary layer. So when a fluid is, let us see, like imagine when a fluid is flowing on the surface, the fluid becomes stationary. The next adjacent layer tries to move at the free stream velocity. If it is entering at 5 meters per second, it will try to move at 5 meters. But the layer which is stationary with the solid surface will try to hold that layer because of the friction. That is the shear stress that is induced. So the next layer will not be able to move at 5 meters per second. But yet it will move because it is having a more inertia. It's moving there. And beyond, again, the layer adjacent to that one, maybe we'll again will try to move at 5 meters per second. This will again hold it. So gradually the velocity from 0 will gradually increase. At one particular height of y direction, the velocity of the fluid will be equal to 5 meters per second. That is free stream velocity. It means beyond that thickness, the fluid is not affected by the presence of the solid body below it. It means the fluid beyond that boundary thickness does not have any effect because of the solid body. So that is the boundary layer. So delta. So wherever in your suppose a flow is there on your flat plate, wherever you have the velocity of the layer that is equal to 99% of your free stream velocity, that you take it as boundary layer. So there again you can see that u infinity is approximately equal to v, which is given that is beyond the boundary layer, the velocity is equal to free stream velocity. So we have to understand like the velocity dou u by dou y, the velocity of is varies in the y direction abruptly. That y direction, it's because of again the wall shear stress, it's because of the friction and all those phenomena what we have studied in fluid mechanics. So this layer within the boundary layer we call as boundary layer region, and beyond which we call the region as inviscid flow region. So beyond the inviscid, we consider there is no friction and no losses, and that region we don't concentrate because that does not going to affect our phenomena of steady. So in laminar and turbulent, if you see what is the difference in the velocity profile, if you see almost both in laminar and turbulent, what is the difference here? The differences in laminar, you can see dou u by dou y at y is 0. That means at the surface, the change in velocity in y direction adjacent to the surface, the differential change is 0 actually. So it means we mean that mathematically when we say that, it means physically we mean that on the surface very close to the wall, the velocity of the fluid is 0. That is what we say. Then as we move up, u is a function of y. It means velocity changes with respect to y direction. As we move higher up, the velocity increases, and at one point in time it becomes u infinitive. So what is the difference in laminar and turbulent? In turbulent again you have u bar over there. U bar is nothing but the time averaged velocity, because turbulence u velocity is nothing but turbulent average. It is the mean average or time averaged velocity. You have again turbulent stresses and Reynolds stresses that is induced. So because you know the reason is in turbulence flow, the fluid does not move as smooth as in laminar, and there's a complete chaos. There's a complete complete mixing of the layers over there. So at any point of time, if you any point on the flow, if you find out there is always a velocity that is varying with the time, that is varying with the space also. So it is a time averaged velocity that is taken for a turbulent condition, whereas here to the velocity in the mean flow, the mean velocity in the flow, mean flow is taken here. So if you find out dou u by dou y at y is equal to 0 in laminar, that is less than the dou u by dou y equal to 0 at turbulent. So away from the if you say what do you mean is away from the, you can see the profile of the velocity profile there, the slope of the equation you can see that tells you like dou u by dou y is less than, the velocity gradient is lesser in the case of laminar, and a turbulent the velocity gradient is very high in the y direction. So u bar is nothing but the time averaged velocity. So let us talk about shear stress. So what happens to viscosity? Again, we say viscosity when we talk about viscosity of liquid with respect to temperature. Viscosity, we know that when temperature increases, obviously viscosity decreases, and we have Newtonian fluids like water and other things. Blood is again a non-Newtonian fluid. They follow that direct relation between shear stress and velocity gradient. They have a linear relationship. So viscosity here, when the temperature increases, the viscosity of liquid decreases. Gases, it increases, because in gases you have a random and chaotic motion, a continuous motion of molecules. The more the temperature, the gases move with a more confused random motion, and they strike with each other. A huge momentum is transferred, and thus the viscosity increases in gases when compared to liquids. In liquids, actually, when you heat it, actually you have an intermolecular space that has been increased, and the cohesive force between the liquids decreases, and the flow becomes a little bit easier, and the liquid starts flowing here. So the shear stress tau s is equal to mu into dou u by dou y is the relation what we have seen in fluid mechanics. That is the stress at the surface. Say for example, the stress here in the y direction is nothing but equivalent to the that is nothing but proportional to the velocity change. So if you find out the velocity change is very high, in the previous case we saw that in turbulent flow you can see dou u by dou y, dou u bar by dou y is always higher than that is the change in velocity in y direction. In turbulent flow is very high when compared to laminar flow. It means the shear stress is very high in case of turbulent flow. So that is the relation here. So tau s is nothing but directly proportional. The shear stress between the layers is proportional to the velocity gradient. So more the that is you can say that between two layers, when the two layers oppose each other to a greater extent, more shear stress is there. Then it means the velocity between the two layers is also very high. And as we go higher and higher, the velocity between the two layers gradually decrease. And at one point in time there is no velocity change. So it means tau s is inversely proportional to dou y. As y increases, tau s decreases, and mu brings in the, and we have to add a proportionality constant. Mu brings in the fluid fluid property. So for different fluids, you'll have different kind of dynamic viscosity that will play an important role in deciding the velocity change or the velocity gradient. So we bring in mu here once we remove the proportionality constant. So in practically, can you measure this tau s is not possible, because you'll not be able to measure what is dou u by dou y very close adjacent to that one. Though we say that in hot wire aluminum metal we can measure the temperature there in that close vicinity, but dou u by dou y is is not possible at y equal to 0. So the practical way of doing is you find out quotient of friction, CF. So this is another relation that is analytically derived, which is nothing but rho v square by 2. Again, it is nothing but the kinetic energy. So tau s is again directly proportional to rho v square by 2, and CF is the quotient of friction, and the CF tells about again the fluid which is based on the type of fluid, the shear stress will vary. Maybe if it is a high viscous fluid, then the tau shear stress will be very high. Low viscous fluid, so that property is brought in by CF. So we measure CF experimentally, and once experimentally CF is measured, then we know the density. When we know the velocity is in the downstream velocity of the fluid. We know the density, average density, from which we can find out tau s. Once we can find out tau s. Once tau s is known, mu is again dynamic viscosity at a particular temperature of a fluid, and from that we can find out what is the dou u by dou y. One way of finding. Again, CF, we have a lot of relations. CF is a dimensions friction factor. We have a lot of other relations. For example, even if you find out Hagen-Poiseuille, you can have a Darcy-Weisbach equation in fluid mechanics, where the pressure drop and friction factor are related to each other. So there are many number of researchers who have, numerous researchers have given various friction factors correlations for different conditions of flow also. If the Reynolds number is less than 10,000, maybe you have in an internal flow you have to use a correlation, a different correlation for finding a friction factor, and if it is above maybe 10,000, you have another correlation, because these are all experimentally derived. Of course, why we study is frictional force. Why we study hydrodynamic boundary layer, or we say velocity boundary layer, because as discussed earlier, this is friction force is a very important point that we have to understand. Like if more of the friction that is happening on the more of the friction of the fluid on the surface, so more is the pumping power that is required. So more is the pumping power required. And at the end of the day, your ultimate overall energy efficiency will be less, because you are trying to dissipate more heat by using a fluid, which is really good, but the fluid is having a lot of frictional effect. So you are consuming more electrical energy. So at one point you are trying to dissipate more heat energy, thermal energy. At another junction you are consuming more electrical energy. The net energy transfer, if you see, it will not be effective. So we have, since this friction force plays a very important role. Suppose if I'm having a heat exchanger, in a heat exchanger I need to you have two fluids. Heat exchanger is a device which transfers heat between two fluids. So both the fluids are, say for example, I'm using two pumps to pump both the fluid. Let us say it is plate and fin heat exchanger. So when the fluids move in their respective path, they transfer the energy. So heat is transferred. And nowadays we try to go for compact heat exchangers, try to minimize the size of the heat exchanger, area of the heat exchanger. So the space occupied by the heat exchanger less in the industry, less material is occupied. So we try to transfer more heat with less material. Everything is fine. On the other hand, the fluid which we are pumping inside, if that is consuming more energy because of the flow friction, then obviously our system will not be effective. So we have to, that is the reason we have to consider velocity plays a very important role. We have to consider both velocity as well as temperature in convection. That is the reason we have one equation which is finally derived, is called Navier-Stokes equation, that plays a very important role in solving all of the problems of convection, especially the numerical analysis. Because the other day we have discussed, like there are certain problems which can be analytically solved. You can derive some equations from governing, you can write down the governing equation. After writing down the governing equation, you can apply the boundary condition, you can apply the necessary secondary laws for that subject, and then you can derive a differential equation, you can solve the equation, and maybe you can get a variable. Suppose if you want the temperature or heat transfer or velocity, etc. But in all the cases you do not have that one. In that case, you have to go for a numerical analysis. So when you, as far as convection is concerned, since you have heat transfer and you have both fluid flow, then it comes both the velocity and temperature variable comes into play. So there you have the CFD, computational fluid dynamics, where that plays a very important role, and the Navier-Stokes equation forms the basis of the CFD codes. And based on the CFD codes only, your entire based on the Navier-Stokes equation, steady state equation, and other equations, maybe your continuity equation and momentum equation is what your code is written. So that is the reason we study about friction here. So your friction force FF again is nothing but equal to CF into AS into rho V square by 2, where CF is the friction quotient. This gives the force here. This gives the force of that the force that is acting on the surface. Just excuse me, just a second. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I'll resume the. Okay, thank you. FF is the so the force that is acting on the surface is what is we calculate here once we know the quotient of friction. Next, the friction quotient is directly related to the heat transfer quotient H also. And so the friction quotient, actually, why we try to find the friction quotient, because it's related to the heat transfer quotient. Also, it is related to the power requirements of the pump. The thermal boundary layer, again, as we see in thermal boundary layer, in velocity boundary layer, where there's no slip condition, here there's no temperature jump condition. So if a surface is at a temperature of Ts and the layer of fluid close to the surface will be at Ts. So that will be again at the same temperature, and you can see the profile there, velocity profile, temperature profile. And the temperature profile, you can find out the temperature close to the surface is higher, and maybe in this case, if T infinity is higher, and or I can say T infinity is higher and plate is lower, so the temperature here in the surface will be lower. As it moves away from the plate in the y direction, you can see it becomes T infinity. That is, the temperature of the fluid attains the temperature of the free stream temperature. So at what temperature it is approaching the solid body, the same temperature will have beyond the boundary layer. So delta T again is nothing but the thermal boundary layer thickness, the thickness beyond which the temperature of the fluid will be equal to the temperature of the free stream velocity. At what temperature it was approaching here. So you have the equation Ts plus 99% of T infinity minus T infinity. So it is the difference between Ts and T infinity here. Actually, T infinity is higher and Ts is lower. So that is the reason you have a velocity profile like this way. Otherwise, you have a temperature profile in this manner. Otherwise, you'll have it in opposite direction with having a different profile. So here you'll have the surface, you'll have the longer lines, and as you move up, the lines will become shorter in case the surface is higher temperature and fluid is at lower temperature. So T minus Ts, the temperature at any point minus, that is what is boundary layer is, the outer boundary layer, the T minus Ts, temperature between surface and that T, that should be equal to 99% of the temperature difference between the fluid surface and the solid surface. So in special case, when case of T is a 0, then in special case when you have T is a 0, then we have T is equal to 0.99, or we can say at the point of boundary layer where the temperature is 99% of the temperature is equal to the free stream temperature or approaching temperature of the fluid. So that up to that point the boundary layer. So the boundary layer keeps on growing and it does not. It keeps on increasing along the flow and then it gradually becomes constant. So the point where the temperature in the y direction does not change, the velocity in the y direction does not change. From that point onwards, we call that flow as thermally developed and hydrodynamically developed boundary layers. So what do you mean by developed is along the x length, after certain point of certain distance along the length, the temperature in the y direction within the boundary layer, that difference will be there. The difference will be there between temperature, the difference will be there between velocity, between dou T by, but with adjacent, or I can say dou U by dou X will be equal to 0. So dou U by dou X is along the X direction at a particular location, what temperature is there in the upstream, the same temperature will have in the downstream, the same velocity and temperature will have. So it's called boundary developed, hydrodynamically developed and thermally developed. So heat transfer quotient, again you can see heat transfer quotient is strongly depends. I told you the heat transfer quotient actually is what really helps us to enhance the heat transfer. So the convection heat transfer, from experimental observation, they have found out that the convection heat transfer strongly depends on the fluid properties. It depends on the fluid property. What property? It depends on the viscosity of the fluid, thermal conductivity of the fluid, the density of the fluid specific. So 4 properties are involved here. 4 properties. So the H does not depend on only velocity. So we know that if I want to drink a hot cup of coffee, either you keep it on a table, allow it to cool for a few minutes, or you blow the air over the coffee and you start drinking immediately. So in the first case, it is a natural convection. You are keeping on the table to take time. The second case, you are blowing air. You can drink it immediately. So the second, what is the difference between the two cases? Is the property is the velocity, the flow property. The velocity of the fluid alone changes. So when a velocity increases, the ability of the fluid to absorb heat increases. So that is one property. So not only that one, we have to understand the amount of heat that is absorbed by a fluid or dissipated by a fluid. Because if a surface is hot, the fluid will absorb the energy. If the fluid is hot, it will dissipate the energy to the hot fluid solid surface. So in either case, if the fluid it depends on the fluid properties like dynamic viscosity, thermal conductivity of the fluid, density of the fluid, and specific heat of the fluid. From it depends on fluid velocity, what I told you just now, and also the geometry. A fluid flowing inside a pipe, the absorption capacity is different. When it's flowing over a pipe, that is different. When it's flowing on a flat plate, it is different. When it is flowing on a bank of tubes, it is totally different. It's flowing between two channels, it is different. So to consolidate, we can say the H depends on fluid property, flow property, and geometry. So that is mu, K, rho, Cp, and V. And the geometry is again diameter. If it is, for example, pipe flow, it is diameter is the geometry, what we say, and if it is the characteristic length L in the case of a flat plate. So it's L, and in the geometry we can say DL. So H depends on almost 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties. So 6 variables. H depends on 6 variables. That means, like, if I vary one variable, there is an effect that can be seen on H value. Suppose if I select a fluid with a different specific heat capacity, definitely the H value will change. The heat transfer, the absorption capacity will change. Or if I change the fluid velocity, it will change. If I change the instead of pipe, if I replace it with a flat plate, the absorption capacity will change. So you can see there are 6 variables which is affecting the H. And how is the dependence of the 6 variables on H can be represented is the point here. So normally we can represent any variable. Suppose if we have three variables, say for example we have x and y. Say for example y is a function of x. You can use a graph and you can represent. Maybe even if you have three variables, you can represent a graph. But here the dependence of h is a function of nearly 6 variables. So in that case, its dependence on all the variables cannot be given by a single analytical equation. So we go for a non-dimensionalization approach where the dependency of this h on this all these variables are grouped into 3 groups. That is the place where we play. You have in fluid mechanics. I think students study about Buckingham pi theorem, where you have that number of the dimensions minus variables is equal to m minus n is equal to, you have number of groups, number of 5 groups, etc. So based on that Buckingham pi theorem approach, when all these variables are grouped together, based on that approach, what is explained in what has been illustrated by Buckingham pi theorem, 3 groups have been, all these variables have been grouped into 3. That is the Reynolds number, that is the Prandtl number, and Nusselt number. So as far as convection, as far as post convection is concerned, these 3 are there. If it is a natural convection, we have the Rayleigh number and Grashof number and Prandtl number. So it is replaced by Grashof number, a Rayleigh number, and a Prandtl number. Here we have Reynolds number, we have Nusselt number, Prandtl number. So these 3 numbers actually take into account for any kind of h value. So that is the reason any Nusselt number. So Nusselt number, when you are calculating, Nusselt number is involving it is involved with h. Nusselt number is related to h. H value, heat transfer coefficient, h, we are finding h. So Nusselt number is related to Reynolds number and Prandtl number. So all the correlations, if you find out, it is related to Reynolds number and Prandtl number. It means indirectly we are bringing the dependency of h on all the variables using this non-dimensional groups. So that is the reason all the correlations have Nusselt and Reynolds and Prandtl number. Okay, fine. So Nusselt number, again we have group. Once we group, we know that Reynolds number, it is the inertia force by viscous force, and we have rho u L by mu, which is where LC is the characteristic length of the particular geometry. If it is a pipe, then you have the ds. You give it as d. If it is a plate, if the fluid is flowing over a plate, we give it as L. If it is a pipeline, we call it as D, where rho is the density of the fluid, V is the velocity of the fluid, mu is the dynamic velocity, dynamic viscosity. Sometimes we use, instead of mu by rho can be called as nu. Again, nu is nothing but another, it is a kinematic viscosity. It's a representative factor of mu by rho. It means normally in all the calculations, there are in heat transfer and in fluid mechanics, the mu by rho very often comes into play in studies. So that is the reason mu by rho, instead of having 2 variables, they convert into nu. So there is no much significant meaning on kinematic viscosity, except when it comes to unit, it is called as meter. It is having meter per second, which can say that it is it talks about viscosity dissipation. Because you know that in the conduction, we have one equation where we have alpha is an equation which is called thermal diffusivity. So we have, if you take a one-dimensional, say 3-dimensional Cartesian equation, we have d square dou square t plus dou square t by dou x square plus dou square t by dou square plus dou square t by dou z square plus q by k is equal to 1 by alpha into dou t. That alpha, again, it is a thermal diffusivity. Rho, it talks about rho by Cp, k by rho c. Is k by rho c, thermal conductivity by rho c. And also we have discussed the other day, alpha should be high. That is, thermal conductivity should be high rather than the rho c. Rho c tells that it tells us like the heat stored by the body. So when heat is when heat energy is flowing it is conducted in the body. The body should not store heat, instead it should conduct it. So alpha should be high. So alpha unit is meter square per second. So alpha tells you that thermal diffusivity, how fast heat can diffuse within a medium, is what the alpha tells there. Similarly here, nu, that is viscosity, that is kinematic viscosity unit, it is having meter square per second, and it is telling like how viscous dissipation effect will be there in the fluid. So it talks about, so the other significance meaning of kinematic viscosity is this is the one, because otherwise there is no much necessary that we should have kinetic viscosity. Dynamic viscosity is more sufficient for us. So here inertia force by viscous force. So when a fluid is flowing in the laminar zone, you know that the fluid inertia force, the fluid is moving at a particular velocity with an inertia. When that inertia force is more than the viscous force, sorry, if the viscous force is more than the inertia force, the fluid cannot move here and there. It has to move in a straight line. Maybe it has to move in a straight path, or it has to move in a fashion in which it is moving, because the viscous force is trying to hold the object the layers and it is holding the layers together. It is not allowing to move in a zigzag manner. So always in Reynolds number, you can see the viscous force is high, inertia force is lower. So in that case, what happens is that the Reynolds number is less. Reynolds number. On the contrary, if you go to the turbulent zone, if in the turbulent zone, what happens is that inertia force becomes more, viscous is less. That is, the fluid tries to hold the other layers, but since the velocity is very high, what happens is that the inertia, the force at which it is moving forward, the other layers are not able to hold it and stop it. So the inertia force is more and viscous is very less, and that is the Reynolds number is high. So when velocity increases, the Reynolds number increases, we get turbulent flow. So when velocity increases, inertia force increases than the existing viscous force. So the fluid becomes does not move in a patterned manner. It moves in a chaotic or confused manner, or it moves in a zigzag manner. So that is the effect of Reynolds number. Next, because the LC is the characteristic length and the kinetic viscosity as the unit meter square per second. So it can be, just as I told you, it can be viewed as the diffusivity or diffusivity of momentum. So now requirement is how when you talk about the last term, it can be viewed as viscous diffusivity or diffusive momentum. Whether momentum has to be diffused more is the question here. Whether that is when a fluid is flowing in a pipeline or over a flat plate, within the fluid layer, whether that should be diffused momentum is required, means that is not required. If more diffusivity of momentum is nothing but again it is the rate of change of velocity. It is the momentum is again the force. We talk about Newton's second law, F is equal to ma. So mass into acceleration, mass to rate of change of velocity. So when there's a diffusive momentum, it means the adjacent layer, there's a lot of force that is exerted by one layer on the another layer, and due to which actually the fluid cannot move freely, instead of, because of which we have to apply more pumping power to push that one. So we do not require more momentum. It means the viscosity should be as less as possible. The viscosity of the fluid should be as less as possible so that it can freely move. Whereas there is one more relation we'll see in the Prandtl number that you will understand. Next is Nusselt number. Nusselt number, I think the other day, one professor maybe asked about what is Biot number and Nusselt number. Maybe we are not able to give an answer, maybe with, because of that last minute of time. Maybe now, maybe I can just support on that argument what we have done the other day. So Nusselt number here, let us see what is Nusselt number. So Nusselt number here again, it is the, as I told you already, it is the conduction to convection resistance that is here. So what do you mean by that one is like, let me talk about here. So heat transfer, when there is a fluid motion, see when there is a fluid motion in the between the two plates, when there's a fluid layer, T2 is a temperature, higher temperature, T1 is a lower temperature. When there is a fluid motion there inside, then the heat transfer will be by convection. Suppose hot plate, the T2 plate will cool down and T1 plate will become hotter. It is because of the convection, the fluid that absorbs the heat. It's because of the bulk motion of the fluid. That is the thing. So in that case, what is the formula for heat transfer? Convection Q is equal to capital Q is equal to HA delta T. For unit surface area, it is heat flux. You call it as H delta T. And suppose if the fluid is not moving, then how the heat transfer will be? It will be by conduction, as we have discussed earlier. So when the fluid layer is motionless, it is by conduction. In that case, what happens is you have the formula that for heat conduction is K into delta T by L. What is K? Thermal conductivity of fluid is very, 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 very low. So compared to convection, this conduction will not be effective. Very, very, it will be poor. It will take hours together for the bottom plate to get slightly heated up because of the poor conduction between the fluid, especially liquid or air or water, etc., especially fluid layers. So K into delta T is T2 temperature of the hot plate, T minus temperature of cold plate. L is the length, the distance between the two plates. K is the thermal conductivity of fluid. So what is the ratio between this one, taking this their ratio? So if you take the ratio Q convection by Q conduction, H delta T by K delta T, you have HL by K, which is Nusselt number. So Nusselt number, okay, fine. Nusselt number, you can see in this case, if you want the T2 plate to get cooled down, so what is our requirement? Should the fluid be stationary or should the fluid be moving? So our requirement will be when the fluid is moving only, the plate will get cooled down fast. So we need more convection than conduction. So now you come into Nusselt number and you see Nusselt number is HL by K. So H tells that fluid property, K tells about the fluid thermal conductivity. So we need more H. So we need more H, and instead of K cannot be increased. So you can you have more H when compared to K. H is higher. So always when the numerator H is higher, Nusselt number is higher. So when Nusselt number is higher, convection heat transfer is dominant when compared to conduction, because at any point of flow or for solid and fluid surface, you have both the phenomena that plays into role. Suppose if, for example, you take a flat plate and a fluid is close to the flat plate is stationary. It is that is in no slip condition. The velocity is 0, and above which the fluid is actually flowing. So from the hot plate, the fluid above the stationary surface, stationary layer has to get heated up. So the stationary layer has to conduct that heat. So as it is conducting, that fluid will remove the heat. If the conduction there and the stationary layer is very poor, then definitely the convection also will be very poor. So to be very simple, Nusselt number tells the ratio between the conduction and the convection and conduction. Okay, and last as we discussed I think one professor asked me about Biot number. There only difference is K here is the thermal conductivity of the fluid. As far as Nusselt number is concerned, there the K is nothing but the thermal conductivity is solid when we go for Biot number. So that is the only difference. So I just wanted to add this point, as I have not clarified very clearly last class. So next is Prandtl number, the last, because we have grouped. So we have discussed like H depends on 3 variables. H depends on 6 different variables, and we have grouped all the variables: the Reynolds number, Nusselt number, and Prandtl number. Reynolds number tells about whether the flow will be turbulent or the flow will be laminar. Nusselt number tells you like whether convection will be more or conduction will be more. Prandtl number, no. Now the Prandtl number, you can see it is the molecular diffusivity of momentum by molecular diffusivity of heat. So here, this is what we are discussing here. So now you see, if you want to select a Prandtl number for a particular application, what should be the value of Prandtl number is the question here. So the Prandtl number, whether we want a molecular diffusivity of momentum, so when a fluid is flowing in a pipeline, whether we want the fluids to transfer momentum within them, transfer force between the adjacent layer, which we want momentum to be transferred or heat to be transferred. The requirement is in heat transfer, we want more heat to be transferred. So the denominator part, that is alpha. Alpha is thermal diffusivity. We want thermal diffusivity to be more. We want the numerator momentum diffusivity to be minimum. So in that case, Prandtl number has to be less. Prandtl number has to be less. So for any heat transfer application, we have to select the Prandtl number as lowest Prandtl number, so that will give very effective heat transfer results. If we have select a high Prandtl number fluid, then the force that is required to pump the fluid will be enormous, and ultimately the entire process will not be energy efficient. On the other hand, if you see Prandtl number is nothing but equal to mu Cp by K. So you can see K. If you see K, that is the relation for this Prandtl number. So any fluid, if you can calculate mu Cp by K, you can find out Prandtl number, and it should be low enough. So let me give some values here. Liquid metals, you can see the Prandtl number. You can see it's very low, 0.004, and you can see glycerin. When glycerin is what is glycerin? What is the Prandtl number? 2000. So if you see here, Prandtl number is very high. What is the meaning here? Molecular diffusivity of momentum. So 2000 is equal to molecular diffusivity of momentum by molecular diffusivity of heat. So momentum is very transfer of high. So it is transferring force between adjacent layers. The molecule movement, the Brownian moment or the motion, the diffusivity motion of the molecules within the fluid is transferring more force. So it is not allowing the fluid to move forward. In that case, glycerin, etc., if I'm using for heat transfer application, you just imagine what is the pumping power that is required. It is very, so there glycerin does not diffuse heat very fast when compared to say momentum transfer. So that is the reason you can see 20,000, 2,000 to 1 lakh is glycerin having Prandtl number. Oils are having the order of 50 to 1 lakh. Organic fluids are 5 to 50, water is having 1.7 to 13.7, and gases are 0.7 to 1, and liquid metals, etc. We are having all this data. So we'll select an optimal value based on the cost of the fluid and the other factors, heat transfer factors, etc. So now heat transfer coefficient, when I talk about heat transfer coefficient, it's a very important graph what we have to understand. So you have two here two graphs are represented, two variables are represented here. One is h and another is delta x. The variation of h and delta over the length of that geometry is been shown in this particular diagram. So in the y-axis you have h and del, and the x-axis you have the length, etc. So xc is called as the characteristic length. Characteristic length xc we call it as characteristic length. So what is characteristic length? Is the length. Suppose I take a plate, I have 5 meter, and there's a fluid flowing over the plate. For me, I should understand whether the flow is laminar, whether the flow is turbulent. Not necessary that always the flow entering the approaching the plate will be laminar. It can enter at turbulent point also. It can be turbulent also. Even the flow entering a plate can be turbulent, so that the entire flow of the plate can be turbulent, or it can be laminar, and along the length it can complete flow can also be laminar. So in any kind of case, when a flow is over a flat plate or pipe, the first point we have to understand what is the flow, whether it is laminar or turbulent, or it is changing from laminar to turbulent. So in that case, we calculate the critical length x. We calculate. So x is nothing but, again, Reynolds number is ud by nu. For in the case of a flow that is flowing through a pipe, it is ul by nu. U is the velocity of the fluid, and nu is the, for example, nu is the viscosity of the fluid. It is the kinematic viscosity. L is the length. So that L is what is called as the characteristic length. So what you do is Reynolds number. If in the case of flat plate, you know that from experimental observation, they have given like, if the Reynolds value is greater than 5 into 10 power 5, the flow is turbulent, and the Reynolds number is less than 5 into 10 power 5, the flow is laminar. So what we have to do is you initially any given condition, first you calculate the critical Reynolds number. So you put, for example, it's a flat plate. So 5 into 10 power 5 is equal to u into L x, u into x by nu. X is the critical Reynolds number. So u velocity is given, nu for a given temperature. You can find out the property of the fluid from your data books, and from that x you can find out. Suppose when you find out critical, you can find out the critical length. Suppose the critical length is 3 meters. For example, you're getting as 3 meters, and your plate length is only 2 meters. Suppose your plate length is only 2 meters, but you're getting critical length as 3 meters. It means, what is the meaning? The flow entering and leaving will be only laminar. No turbulence will occur, because critical length tells that the point from where the flow will change from laminar to turbulent. Suppose if your length you are getting as 3 meter, and your plate is, say, for example, 5 meter length. So it means from the beginning up to 3 meter it will be laminar, beyond 3 meter it is turbulent. So that is the point of calculating critical length for any kind of even numerical problems. We can calculate first critical length and understand whether the laminar flow is completely laminar turbulent, or it is laminar to turbulent. Okay, fine. Now if you find out let us see delta boundary layer. I told you boundary layer gradually increases from the leading edge. And it gradually increases, and there are two zones here. We have shown you laminar and turbulent and a transition. So the laminar, that boundary layer is a little bit lesser thickness, and in the turbulence the higher, because the more shear stresses in the turbulent layer. We have seen that the velocity, change in velocity in y direction, is very high in turbulent zone. So that is the reason you have a higher boundary layer, higher thickness of boundary layer, because the velocity gradually decreases only, and for the velocity to become free stream velocity, the height is very high. So beyond this delta x in the laminar only, in turbulent zone only, the fluid flow is having free stream velocity, below which the velocity is not free stream velocity. And the other graph here it's shown as h. That is what you have to understand. You can see h gradually decreases here. Experimental observation tells you the h gradually increases in the laminar. Let us first talk about laminar. So h, you can see there is a parabolic. There is a decrease in H value along the length. So what do you physically understand from this? As of suppose you take a hot plate of say 500 degrees Celsius and there's a cold air at 20 degree entering the plate. When it's entering the plate, you can see it can absorb more heat. Why it can absorb more heat? Because the temperature difference is very, very high. Because H again, the temperature difference is very high. Q is nothing but HA delta T. So more heat can be absorbed. Because the temperature difference is very high. So the fluid can absorb more heat, because more the temperature difference, more will be the heat absorbed. Now, when the same fluid and it's progressing forward, it's getting higher. The temperature keeps on increasing, and the temperature difference between the fluid and the hot surface keeps on decreasing. So the ability to absorb heat gradually decreases. So H value gradually decreases because it's a laminar flow. It's a laminar flow, layer by layer flow. Once the flow starts turbulent, the fluid layers are not moving the fluid is not moving layer by layer. Instead, what happens? The fluid layer starts mixing. So the bottom layer is mixing with the top layer. The top layer is mixing with the it's coming in contact with the bottom surface of the hot plate. So the fluid is in continuous contact with the hot surface. So more heat is taken in turbulent zone. So that is the reason there is a sudden value of H. So if H is high means the fluid is taking more heat. So once the turbulence starts, the fluid suddenly starts mixing with the entire fluid starts mixing and it comes in contact with the hot plate and it absorbs heat, and as moving along the length, it gradually decreases. So the point you have to understand, heat transfer coefficient in turbulent flow, H will be very, very high when compared to laminar flow. That is the reason in most of the industrial applications, we operate the system in turbulent region so that the heat transfer is very high rather than laminar zone. But on the other hand, in turbulent zone, when we operate, we have to see the pumping power does not increase, because when you are increasing, when you want to have turbulence, the velocity should be high. When more the velocity, then we should see the pressure drop also should not be very, very high. The pressure drop is very high, then the pumping power also will be high. So the point here is H, the value of H, the ability of the fluid. Suppose you take a flat plate of 3 meter length. Right from the beginning to the end, the fluid, when it's traveling over the flat plate, it does not have the same capacity to absorb the heat at every point. At every point, the capacity to absorb the heat along the length, it differs. So when you calculate H value in numerically, there are two things we can calculate, either local heat transfer coefficient or average heat transfer coefficient. Local heat transfer coefficient is for a particular length, we'll calculate how much heat is absorbed, because from the graph we understand H varies continuously in X direction in laminar as well as turbulent. So we calculate H in the local H, or we can calculate average. Averages over the entire length of the pipe, since H is differing from point to point along the length, we can take an average over the entire length. So that is average. So when you are calculating the total heat transfer rate, total heat that is dissipated on the plate, you have to take the average heat transfer coefficient. Whereas when you want to calculate heat from a particular length of a plate, you have to take local heat transfer coefficient, because obviously the formula for Q is HA into delta T. So Q, if you are calculating, you need H, you need A, delta T is the temperature difference of the plate and the fluid, and area is the surface area, and H. So where you want on the entire plate, if you want Q, it is the total heat transfer. In that case, H should be average heat transfer coefficient. If Q you want only for a particular length of the plate, if the plate length is 5 meter and you want only for 1 meter, so Q is local heat transfer rate, and H should also be local heat transfer. So that is the point we have to understand from this graph of heat transfer coefficient. It's almost so conservation of equation of mass. We have the basic differential equations that is very important for us when we do this convection. So let us take a small controlled volume here and a small differential length in the x direction as dx and y as dy, and use the velocity of fluid entering in the x direction, and u plus dou u by dou x into dx is what the velocity that is leaving the control volume. So here, how do you get that one? Is by doing a Taylor series expansion of velocity. That is, you can find these factors, or as I've told you the other day, maybe you can to have a physical understanding for to have a interpretation or to remember the students can be told like u is entering, the same u should leave out. Plus there will be some velocity, maybe there's a velocity change within the control volume that has to be accounted. So dou u is change in velocity, in which direction is changing is x direction dou x, and for what length it is changing is dx. So this would be easy for them to approach the equation, but actually this is coming from Taylor series expansion. Similarly, v is the velocity entering the y direction, and y direction, and v leaving the control volume is v plus dou v by a change in velocity in y direction for the thickness of dy. So we are going to derive a conservation equation of mass and conservation of momentum and energy. These three equations are very important here. We know that continuity rate of mass flow into control volume is equal to rate of mass flow out of control. Whatever is entering is leaving. Rate means if in 1 second, say for example, 10 kg of fluid is entering the control volume, in 1 second 10 kg has to leave. If it is not leaving, something has stored inside the system. So we are taking as rate of mass flow. Nothing is stored here. Rate of mass flow into the control volume. Whatever is entering into the control volume, the same thing is leaving out of the control volume. So next we know that when you do this again, you know that rho AV, the mass flow rate is rho AV. You know mass flow and the volume flow rate is AV. We have studied in fluid mechanics rho AV. So the rho, if you see in the left hand side, left face, if you see velocity is u, rho is the density, u is the velocity, v, a is the area, dy is the thickness of the control volume, that is the differential thickness in the y direction, and 1 is the depth in the depth of this control volume across the screen, what you see. So the area is dy into 1. Similarly, in the y direction, if you see the mass flow rate is again rho AV. Rho is there, v is the velocity v, and area is dx multiplied by dot 1. And similarly, when it is leaving, you can see rho into, you just multiply by rho, and you have the velocity term on the right hand side is rho u plus dou u by dou x into dx, into then area is again dy into 1. Similarly, on the y direction, if you want to find out mass flow rate out, it is mass, that is rho AV, rho into area is again dx into dot 1 into velocity is v plus dou v by dou y into dy. So simplifying and dividing by dx, dy, everywhere if you multiply by dx and dy, the volume of the control volume, if you just multiply, if you divide that by control volume, then finally you get this equation as dou u by dou x plus dou u by dou y is equal to 0. This is the continuity equation in 2 dimension. Maybe if you take 3 dimension, it will have a dou w by dou z is equal to 0. So that is the conservation equation, or you can call this as continuity or mass balance. This is an important fluid mechanics equation, what we have studied already. Next is conservation of momentum. So conservation momentum is again, you go for you start this momentum equation from Newton's second law, because since fluid is flowing, we are using, already I've told you in the conduction we have discussed, like we have discussed in conduction, like any kind of physical problem, we first use the primary conservation equations, conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, Newton's law, etc. Then we use the secondary equations that is particular that is specific to a particular subject. So here again we are using the generalized equations. Since the fluid is in motion, we have conservation of momentum equation. So momentum is again, say, Newton's second law, F is equal to ma. Force is nothing but mass into acceleration. So the force acting on a small, suppose you take a fluid is flowing in a pipeline or over a small flat plate, you just imagine a small control volume which is having fluid here. So the control volume, so F is equal to ma. So what are the forces acting on the control volume? F is equal to m into a. M is mass of the control volume, a is the acceleration. So when there is a force, always there should be acceleration. So this is the conservation equation. So Newton's second law of motion for control volume. So mass into acceleration is equal to net force. So there are two forces normally that acts on any body. There is body force and surface force acting on that. So body force is like force due to gravity. Body force that is not in contact. You can say contact force and non-contact force. Surface force are forces that are in contact forces. So body is gravity that is acting on the entire volume of the gravity will act on the entire volume. There is surface force will that act on the surface of the control volume. that we can see what is that. So a differential mass element is dm delta into acceleration is ax, and we are talking about only one direction, x direction. Suppose if you take y direction, it is dm into ay equal to, so we have to, since the motion of the control volume is in the x direction, we need to consider the forces acting on the x direction. We have two forces, one is surface force and body force. So again, delta m, again, what is mass is nothing but density into volume. Volume into density is mass, so density into volume of the element is dx into dy into 1. So dm you can replace by this value. Since flow is steady and two-dimensional, flow is steady, properties do not vary with time. It may vary with location, but it will not vary with time, and it is two-dimensional, so it is moving in x and y direction. So in that case, the velocity will vary in x whereas y direction. So that is the x component of velocity will vary in x and y direction because the flow is two-dimensional. So in that case, du, the change in velocity, that the change in velocity can be represented partial differentiation, dou u by dou x into dx, because velocity changes x. At the same time, velocity also changes in y, so you have two components coming into play for velocity. So dou u by dou x into dx, change in velocity in y direction, because it's a two-dimensional flow. So within the control volume, the x direction velocity u will change in x as well as in change in y. So u is the x direction velocity. That will change in x also, y also. It can move in upwards, it can move straight also. In that case, what is the velocity it is changing in x direction is dou u by dou x. What is the velocity changing in y direction is dou by dou y. And finally, when you simplify it, so delta m into ax, now you can see that the equation, now we got it. So what is the acceleration? Again, rate of change of velocity. Du by dt is acceleration. So already we know du in two dimension. Du is a partial it's a partial differentiation of velocity in both x and y. So put those terms here. So du by dt, if you substitute the above equation here, in this equation you put as du by dt. If you put du by dt, dou u by dou x into dx by dt plus dou u by dou y into dy by dt, you get it. So you get dt here, so you get acceleration, because for acceleration you know that it is rate of change of velocity. So from this you can find out dou u by you can find out u into dou u by dou x, because dou x by dou t, dx by dt is again u. Distance traveled, change in distance by change in time is the fluid moving in x direction is u velocity, plus dy by dt is flow in change in distance in y direction in a particular time is again velocity in v. So dy by dt can be represented as v, and dx by dt can be u. So you get u dou u by dou x plus v dou u by dou y instead of ax. So instead of ax. So now we know that we have calculated. We know what is dm. Delta m is nothing but density into volume, rho into dx into dy into 1, and we know ax, the left hand side ax we have found out is u dou u by dou x plus v into dou u dou y. Right hand side now we have to calculate, that is the surface forces and the body forces. The force acting on the surface are due to pressure and viscous effects. So forces on the surface, pressure. So when I have a differential volume, the pressure of the fluid, surrounding fluid that is adjacent to the control, that is the control volume, that fluid will exert pressure on the control surfaces, on the surface of the control surface of the differential volume, that will push it. Also because of the fluid, since it is in motion, there will be viscous effects. So viscous effects is it's moving in x direction, there will be viscosity in this thing. That's shear the thing. That's viscous effects. So the viscous effects can be again classified. Okay, in two-dimensional flow, the viscous stress you can at any point can be resolved. Since it's two-dimensional, it can be resolved, because since it's motion in two dimension, you have viscous effect in two dimensions. So that can be called as normal stress acting along the acting perpendicular to the surface, and another one is shear stress. This normal stress and pressure is not is both totally different. We should not get confused with pressure and normal. Pressure is nothing but is the force that is exerted by the adjacent fluid on the surface. That is pressure, which will occur normal to the surface. Whereas normal stress is nothing but a stress that is due to the viscosity effect. So viscosity effect in the x direction is you call normal stress. Maybe you have two directions, two perpendicular components. One is normal stress and another one is shear stress. So totally you have pressure, you have normal stress, you have shear stress that is coming to play. Okay, now you can see here, say pressure here or normal stress. Now you can see. So now you can see the surface x we are just finding out the surface x only. We are just trying to find out the surface x force on x only, x direction only. So you can see the shear stress acting here because since the fluid is in motion, there's a shear stress which will so because of which there will be a linear transformation of the transformation or rotation of that element. So here it is you can see that it is dou tau by dou y to dy into dx into dy1. So force means it is the stress into area. Area is dx into 1 and dou tau by dou y into dy is nothing but what you have the net shear stress, because you can have shear stresses tau minus or you can say tau minus tau plus dou tau by dou y into dy. So when you take the net shear stress, you'll have this value. Similarly, when you have the pressure here, net pressure, left hand side you have pressure P acting, right hand side you have P plus dou P by dou x acting opposite to each other, because the fluid on the left hand side will compress the fluid here towards this, it will act normal, and every action has got an equal and opposite reaction. There will be another, the fluid element trying to compress this right hand side surface from the other side. So here the pressure is P, the same pressure will not be here along this side. So P plus dou P by dou x, that will be change in pressure by Taylor series of expansion. So with the net force acting, you want the net force. Net forces both the P will cancel. You will have dou P by dou x into dx and multiplied by the area. Similarly, on the in the y direction, if you find you have the shear stress acting at the bottom and the top of the fluid, the bottom surface is having tau, top surface is in tau plus dou tau by dou y to dy, and when you have calculate the net, the tau gets cancelled and you get dou tau by dou y into dy, and you have to multiply, that is the shear stress, under the area on the top surface, which is dx into 1. So now if tau, you can, tau also you can substitute for tau value. Tau is, that already we have seen in fluid mechanics, it is nothing but tau, the shear stress directly proportional to the velocity gradient, and when you remove the proportional constant, you get mu. So tau is going to be mu into dou u by dou y. When you substitute that one in the above equation, the right hand side, dou tau by dou y. There, if you substitute tau as you substitute dou u by dou y, you'll get dou square u by dou y square into mu minus dou p by dou x into dx into dy into 1 actually, that is dx into dy to 1. And finally, you can see rho into dou u into dou x plus v into dou u by dou y is equal to mu into dou square u by dou y square minus dou p by dou x. This is the conservation of momentum equation in 2 dimension we have seen here. So this is the left hand side gives you the this thing mass into acceleration term, right hand side gives you the force, the x momentum equation, and finally the x conservation equation is there. So in the case of x conservation equation, you can see that heat in the x direction, E is heat out in the y direction, and the left hand side E mass is entering in the x, mass is out. This is x direction, is not y. It's a mistake in the diagram. Similarly, heat entering in y, mass entering in y. So what you have to understand is, when you have a control volume, the heat there's a when fluid is entering the control volume, fluid carries some energy, which is the enthalpy. So we have studied H is nothing but Cp into T in thermodynamics. So when a fluid, when the mass is entering control, it's having some energy. It's already hot. It's already having some energy. Whether it's hot or not, it's having some energy. So that energy is called you call it as enthalpy. So enthalpy is nothing but Cp into T. So that energy is entering into controller. Apart from it, if heat is entering, so there are 2 energies entering into the controller. One is energy in the form of heat, another is energy in the form of mass. So both you have to take into account. So let us take, even sometimes energy in the form of work is also there in thermodynamics, but in this case we don't take energy in the form of work. Suppose you supply electrical energy to the system, you drive a motor or something, then from thermodynamics it is the energy that is transferred due to work. So here we are not considering work, but we'll write the general equation. E in minus E out is equal to delta E. Suppose if there's a difference between the energy entering and energy leaving, some energy should be stored. And if there is no energy stored, En will be equal to E out. So here there's no energy stored. So you can see E in minus E out by heat plus E in minus E out by work. E in minus E out by heat, E in minus E out by work, plus E in minus E out by mass is equal to 0. I told you work energy we are not considering. We are going to consider that the energy entering into the system and leaving the system as a form of heat energy, and energy entering or leaving the system as a form due to the mass that is entering. We'll only consider these two, and since it is right hand side equal to 0, we consider that no energy is stored inside the control volume. Fine. Now let us see mass. Let us take mass, and next we'll see about heat. So E in minus E out by mass, that is equal to, so energy entering is by mass is m dot into E, where m dot is the mass entering into the system. E is the energy per unit mass. E is the enthalpy per unit mass. So for if 1 kg of air is coming, what is the energy is E representing? And m dot is telling you in 1 second how much mass is entering. Say maybe 10 kg can enter 10 kg can enter in 1 second, and E tells you what is the energy, that is enthalpy for 1 kg of air. So m dot into E tells you the total energy entering the stream, entering here, and what happens is the right hand side you can see what will happen. The energy what is entering due to mass, when it's coming outside, maybe that will be that energy may come out, plus maybe there is some change in energy because of heat supplied inside. So that is mathematically written as so energy entry, so m dot E x phase, that is left hand phase, is equal to, so when I say that is equal to energy that is entering, energy leaving the right hand phases, m dot E plus that change in that energy dou into m dot E by dou x into dx. Now when you subtract both, because we need E in minus E out, you subtract this one, you get this equation. What you get from this equation, above equation is said m dot E and minus m dot both can cancelled. Finally, what stands out is dou into m dot E by the fluid stream in x direction by dou x into dx. So E is now you can write as m. M is density into rho, density into velocity into area. You can give rho AV. So m dot mass flow rate is rho AV. So m is rho, m dot is rho, and x direction velocity is u, and the area in x direction is dy, perpendicular area dy into 1. That is m dot, and E is given as I told you, E is nothing but the enthalpy, H is Cp into T. So finally you get m dot E as rho u A, that is rho AU mass flow rate into Cpt. So mCpt is nothing but instead of m we have m dot, which is rate of mass flow. So divided by dou x into dx is equal to minus, finally you can say that the minus rho Cp into u into dou t by dou x plus t into dou u by dou x into dx into dy minus rho Cp. So you can take this minus rho Cp outside from this equation. From this equation you can have rho Cp outside. Then you will have a dou into u and t, and you do a differentiation. You do a differentiation there. You'll get u into uv method. You do a differentiation by uv method. You'll get u into differentiation of t plus t into differentiation of u, and finally you get this equation minus rho Cp into u into dou t by dou x plus t into dou u by dou x into dx dy. With that equation, you can see what we got is like finally we got this equation now being derived. Repeating this for y direction, in x direction you do in y direction. Wherever you have x component of x, wherever you have x, you replace it by y, and wherever you have u velocity, you replace it by v. That's it. So only one term will change, is that the right hand side, if you see that the first term rho Cp into v into dou t by dou x will be the only change that you have to add along with this one. And this is the energy in minus energy out because of mass in x direction and y direction. We have taken 2 dimensions, x and y. And from this equation, since we know that the continuity equation dou u by dou x plus dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y, continuity equation equal to 0, then if you see the above equation, if you add the equation minus rho Cp, both the terms, if you add the energy in minus energy out, on the right hand side, if you add both the terms together, finally you will end up with dou u by dou x. T, you can take t common, t into dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y, with the t as common, that dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y can become 0. Then finally you get only temperature term and velocity term, change in velocity vanishes. So minus rho p into u into dou t by dou x plus v into dou t by dou y into dx dy. So this is the energy that is entering, net energy entering the control volume. It's because of the mass and not because of heat. It's only because of the mass. Because we said like in a control volume, the energy can enter because of mass. It can enter because of heat, the form of heat. It can enter in the form of work. But we neglected. We took only mass. When we say mass, it is enthalpy that is entering. Enthalpy is nothing but CPT. So M is we replaced by we do not write MCP because since the fluid is flowing, it is M dot rate of mass flow. So we use rho AV. Mass flow rate is rho AV. So rho AV into CPT. We did all the differentiation. We did energy in, energy out in X as well as Y direction, and finally we end up in this equation. And now if you see energy entering in by heat, energy out by heat. Heat is left phase. What will Q dot X is the heat energy entering left phase minus heat leaving right phase is Qx plus change in Qx by dou x into del x. And Q is since it's by conduction here, because heat entering by conduction, because fluid is there. It is you use the Fourier law of equation. Fourier law is nothing but minus k into dou t by dou x. It is dou t by dou x. That is the Fourier law. So finally, it is minus k into. So if you use the above equation, qx and minus qx will cancel. You'll have dou by dou x, qx of dou x minus. You'll have a sign inside when you multiply. So minus of dou by dou x, the qx you replace by Fourier law. You'll get again one more minus ka into dou t by dx, where a is dy into 1 is the area perpendicular to x direction into dx. So finally, when you simplify it, both the negative sign cancels out, and you get k into dou square t by dou x square into dx dy. This is the heat that is conducted in the x direction. Similarly, if you take it for y direction, you have to write it as k into dou square t by dou x square into dx y. And if you add both the terms, you get k into dou square t by dou x square plus dou square t by dou x square into dx into dy. So this is the heat conducted in the two dimensions, x and y. So we have found out, like in the energy conservation equation, we have started with energy conservation, that is energy entering a system minus energy leaving system, that should be equal to some energy stored. But in our case, we say energy stored is 0 and energy entered minus energy leaving is equal to 0. Energy can enter in the form of mass, it can enter in the form of heat, it can enter in the form of work. If it's entering in the form of heat, within the control volume, we use the conduction equation. Energy will enter one phase, left phase, then energy will leave the right phase. Then use the Fourier law there and simplify it. And similarly, energy entering as mass. If it's entering, then the energy in the mass is called as enthalpy, and use that enthalpy terms multiplied by the mass flow rate, and you just simplify. You will get the energy that is entering through mass. So when you add both the terms. So that is the final term. When you add everything, you get this as the conservation of energy equation in terms of in two dimension, which is rho Cp into u into dou t by dou x plus v into dou t by dou y, is k into dou square t by dou square minus plus dou square t by dou y square. So with this all the three equations are over. We have done with all the three equations. That is law of conservation of mass, conservation of energy, and law of conservation of momentum. So these three equations form the basis of Navier-Stokes equations. But since sufficient time we're not having, I'm able to cover only up to this point of time, because another 10 minutes I just want to handle on how the convection and problems are being dealt analytically, and how Databook is being used, and how do we approach a problem for a given problem, and how effectively we can use the Databook in selection of the correlations. So maybe another 10 minutes I can spend on that one, and later on I can spend a few minutes on some questions with this. So now we have almost done some conservation of mass, conservation of momentum, and conservation of energy. These form the basis of Navier-Stokes equation. So Navier-Stokes equation is one of the most important equation. As I already told you, that equation forms the basis of coding of all the CFD codes. So you have many n number of softwares. Those faculties who are really interested in doing, say for example, who are in heat transfer and maybe having the domain as heat transfer, or who are handling heat transfer or interested take, maybe you can concentrate on CFD also, because a lot of problems, real-time problems, which are not which cannot be solved by analytical methods, can be solved by numerical method. As a good insight on CFD with the software approach, we can solve real-time problems, and that will help a lot to do some lot of research activities also. So with this, we have come to a conclusion of that theory. What within the time what I'm able to handle. So we have to give a gist of everything. I think we have seen what is convection. Convection is nothing but heat transfer in fluids, especially when there's a bulk motion of the fluid. Convection is nothing but it is having we have two phenomenon where it is natural is there and force is there. And as we discussed, most of the applications we go for forced because the rate of heat transfer is very quick. In convection especially is concerned, we study about hydrodynamic boundary layer and the thermal boundary layer, which are very important. Hydrodynamic boundary layer, we are trying to understand the friction that is involved in the flow and the shear stress that is involved in flow that will affect the pumping power. And we try to understand the thermal boundary layer to understand like how quick heat can be transferred. And when we saw the law, that is basic law that has been used in convection, that is HA delta T, that is Newton's law of cooling. And when we were discussing, we were discussing like for a given kind of application, for a given area and the temperature difference of the solid and fluid surface, the heat rate, the transfer rate can be increased by using a fluid that is having more H. So in what way H can be improved? There are a lot of researches that people do to improve the H and increase the heat transfer rate. And later on we found out like H it does not depend on only velocity, it depends on the flow property, it depends on the flow geometry, it also depends on the fluid property, it depends on the dynamic viscosity, density, specific heat, thermal conductivity, it depends on the flow velocity V, it depends on the geometry, whether it is diameter, whether it is flowing through a pipe or whether it is flowing through a flat plate, over a flat plate, the H value changes. So the dependency of H is brought by Buckingham-Pai theorem. We use the Buckingham-Pai theorem and try to already a relation has been brought between these all the 6 and 7, including H, it is 7 variables that have been grouped into 3 groups. One is Reynolds number, one is Prandtl number, and one other one is Nusselt number. So all these 3 groups put together play an important role in convection, where they talk about all that heat transfer and the molecular momentum and the molecular heat diffusivity, viscosity diffusivity, etc. So Nusselt number and after when we see Reynolds number, we understand like Reynolds number, we normally use Reynolds number with say in the case of internal flow, we try to work in the turbulent region. Suppose if it's a laminar region, if you want to increase the heat transfer rate, we try to convert the flow into turbulent by inducing some disturbance in the flow by means of putting some inserts, putting some blockages to disturb the flow so that it becomes turbulent, so the heat transfer is very high. So normally we try to operate in the range of turbulent zone so that the heat transfer rate is very high. And we came to understanding like H is a very important factor here. H when along the flow, H varies point to point. That is the ability of the fluid to absorb the heat. It varies from point to point. It is high in the beginning and gradually it decreases. Once it becomes turbulent, again it increases, then gradually decreases. So if you for any given situation, if you want to calculate the heat transfer rate, then obviously then the local heat transfer quotient we should know, and also we should know that then only we can calculate local heat transfer rate, because H varies by point to point. So there are correlations available in a data book. with the two values. One is local Nusselt number, another one is average Nusselt number, local heat transfer, average heat transfer, local say for example. So these local terms tells you that only for a particular length in the case of flat plate or particular length in the case of a pipe, the heat transfer, that particular correlation is applicable for the particular length only. Not for the entire length of that domain. For the entire length of the domain, you have to use average value. That is the reason most of the Nusselt number cases, after finding a Nusselt number, maybe you will multiply by 2. Sometimes in certain problems, you will multiply by 2. The reason is to find out the overall heat transfer, we calculate the overall H. So to be very short, H as far as CF friction factor, H, everything is concerned, they are all local dependent. They are dependent on the spatial context. They vary from start in the spatial context. So if you want to find out the total variation, you have to take an average. So why CF you have to find out? To find out the force, you have to find out CF. To find out the total force, maybe a drag force. Suppose for your flat plate, if you find out the total drag force that will act on the plate because of this friction, quotient of friction CF, then you have to calculate the total CF over the surface. If you want to find out only the particular region or the drag force, particular length of the plate, you have to find out the local CF. Similarly, if you want to find out the total heat transfer rate, find out the average H over the entire length of the plate. If you want to only find a particular length, find out the local heat transfer quotient. So with that, I think we have summarized almost everything, and we have done 3 equations, and we have just seen how to derive those equations. And finally, when we work out now problems like how to select the correlation will be another point what we will try to discuss for just a few minutes. So first, let us take any convection problem for that matter. For any convection problem, first let us see what is the type of flow. First, you see the flow, whether it is internal flow or external flow. If it is the internal flow, you select accordingly from your data book. You can go to the internal section. If it's external flow, you can go to the flat plate section. Then once you know the flow is internal or external, then maybe you can try to find out whether the flow is laminar or turbulent. So for external flow also you have a laminar section. For internal flow you have laminar. For external flow you have turbulent. Internal also you have turbulent. After finding out whether, so what you have to do, as I told you, for a given condition, you try to find out the critical Reynolds number. In the case of flat plate, the critical Reynolds number is 5 into 10 power 5. So you know the Reynolds number for a laminar flow, that is for a pipe internal flow, it is 2300. Beyond 2300, it becomes turbulent. So so when I have to find out critical length, when there is a fluid that is flowing with a given velocity, a velocity is given, say a velocity of 5 meter per second, a length of the plate of 5 meter, and the width of the plate is given as 2 meters. So the area is 10 meters square. And you say there's a fluid at 100 degrees, 150 degrees, which is a gas at a velocity of 5 meters per second is flowing over the plate. So basically, you have to understand the length is 5 meter. Whether the flow is entering as laminar, or whether the flow is entering as turbulent, or whether the flow is completely laminar, or it is completely turbulent, or it is completely converted from laminar to turbulent. In that case, we first calculate the critical length. So first, critical length is used the same Reynolds number formula. RE is nothing but ux, velocity into, instead of length, we put it as critical length, ux by nu. So for a flat plate, you know the Reynolds number, critical Reynolds number at which the flow changes from laminar to turbulent. So you know that it is 5 into 10 power 5. So in a given formula, you put instead of Reynolds number, you substitute 5 into 10 power 5 is equal to u, velocity given in the problem, that is 5 meters per second, into x, that is what you have to find out, divided by, say for divided by the viscosity. Viscosity is given temperature is 150 degrees Celsius. For that particular temperature, you can find out viscosity of the fluid. Then from that XCR you calculate. Suppose you are getting a length of say 3 meters, and you already know your length of the plate is 5 meters, so you can understand up to 3 meters it is laminar, beyond 3 meters it is turbulent. So first 3 meters use laminar equations, beyond this thing, beyond 3 meters use turbulent. You can use turbulent equations also. Suppose if you are getting an answer as XCR is getting a 6 meter. So what you have to understand, only when you have a length of plate 6 meter, beyond 6 meter only the flow will change into turbulent. So up to 6 meter it will be laminar. But your length of the plate is 5 meter, so your entire flow is laminar. So you use only laminar correlations. Suppose you are getting an answer is 0.5 meter. So it means first to 0.5 meter it is laminar flow, beyond which the entire 4.5 meter is turbulent. Suppose the heat transfer is asked only in the turbulent region, you can calculate turbulent region. So for any given convection problem, find out whether the flow is internal or external, then find out whether it's laminar or turbulent using this origin. Next important thing is you have to find out what is the wall boundary condition. Next you find out the wall boundary condition. So wall boundary condition is again how the surface is heated. Normally a surface is heated by two ways. Either you have constant wall temperature is given, or either you have a heat flux. Suppose if I have a pipeline and if I have a tube, a pipe, and I'm having a liquid that is entering. If I want the liquid to get heated up, what I can put a heater over my pipeline. Around the circumference. You can put a wire heater, and you can supply the energy. So the flux, that is called heat flux. So the heat flux will enter the pipe. The heat flux energy will be conducted inside, and that heat will be convected by the fluid. So that is constant heat flux condition. And suppose if you take a parabolic trough collector and it is kept in open sun, it is in sunlight. Sun radiation is falling on the black pipe, and it will absorb the energy. So that in that condition it is called as heat flux condition. And constant wall temperature is sometimes the temperature of the wall will be given as constant. Say for example, a plate is maintained at 100 degrees Celsius. A pipe is having a wall maintained at 250 degrees Celsius. It's constant wall condition. So you have correlations for two different cases. One is constant heat flux condition. Another one is constant wall condition. So once you know it is internal, say you know it is flat plate. After flat plate, go to your data book, go for flat plate section. External flow. Once you know it's external flow, go for flat plate section. Go for external flow, select flat plate, find out the XCR length. Now if it is laminar or turbulent, you are getting a say it is turbulent. Go to the turbulent section. Now turbulent section, which Nusselt number you have to calculate? You have to take the Nusselt number, find out what is the wall condition. The wall condition in your problem, if it is given as constant heat flux, it's given as constant heat flux. Select the constant heat flux correlation. Suppose it is given as constant wall temperature. Select the constant wall temperature. That particular condition. It's more appropriate for laminar than turbulent. Turbulent normally constant heat flux and constant wall always both the correlations can same correlation can be used, but it's more appropriate. The wall condition is more, the boundary condition is more appropriate to select the correlations in the laminar region rather than the turbulent region. Because turbulent region, whether the wall heat flux or the constant wall temperature or heat flux does not have much difference in the effect of the correlation. And once you know the correlation, then you can use it. There are certain correlations like Dittus-Boulder correlation, 0.023 into Reynolds number raised to the power m and the Prandtl number raised to the power n, and m and n are the values which depends upon whether the fluid is heated or cooled. So that is a very common correlation that is normally used. Similarly, Nusselt number equal to 4.64. These are correlations. Unless and otherwise nothing is specified, you can use these correlations and you can effectively solve your this thing. I think with this, I will come to a conclusion because the time is already 1:23 or 4. Maybe with this, I will come to a conclusion, and maybe if one or two questions are there, maybe we can discuss or we can try to answer that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This conservation of momentum equation.
Hello.
So in the body, in the surface force, sir, am I audible, sir?
Can you be a little louder? Yeah.
Sir, am I audible?
No. Yeah, there is a little bit disturbance. Okay, I think for others it is audible, or maybe I don't know whether it's for me only.
Yeah, it's audible, sir.
Okay, maybe then. Okay, now you're audible. Yeah, tell me, sir.
The body force and the surface force we have discussed in case of this momentum equation, sir.
Yeah.
Where you have told that in the surface force we are considering only the viscous and the shear force. Is there any other force we can consider in that surface force which will acting in the x direction?
No, as such in the fluid there are no such forces, but to extreme condition when body forces are concerned, apart from the body force, maybe we can say like gravity is there, but we don't include gravity. That does not play an important role. But surface forces so far concerned that only we use only these surface forces because it is the shear force and that acts on the surface and the normal shear stress and pressure that acts on the surface.
Sir,
And
viscous force we are considering as shear, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
As far as body force is concerned, beyond gravity force, we can have other kind of body forces, like in case of you can have some kind of other electronic forces or body that can also happen in there. But body force is concerned, mainly we are considering only about those effects are not very dealt with here as far as this is concerned. What to say, our heat transfer is concerned. But surface forces, these are the forces what we consider.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, that is a convection coefficient depends on whether a surface of medium or a fluid medium, sir.
It is that's what H actually depends on 7 parameters. That's what I was telling. It H not only depends upon the fluid, it also depends upon the geometry. If suppose I'm having water flow in a pipeline and over a flat plate, the behavior is different. So by experimental observation, they have found out like the dependency of H is not on one variable. It is dependent on 6 variables. It depends on the flow property, density. It depends upon the thermal conductivity of the fluid. It depends upon the dynamic viscosity of the fluid. It also depends upon the specificity of the fluid. Apart from it, its velocity and as well as the geometry in which it is flowing. DL. That is the reason whenever you calculate Nusselt number, you have Nusselt number L comes into play if it is the length of the if it's a plate, and D comes into play if it is a pipeline. So it does not only depend on it, it definitely changes based on the geometry also.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
This is Srinivas, sir. I have one doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, we are following a lot of theories for the Nusselt number, Reynolds number, and such things. We are following some equations what they are already derived. For that, they are doing the derivation. They are taking some assumptions, right? So how that assumption is to be satisfied, or it is come more related to the practicality of the heat transfer?
Actually, say whatever assumptions that has been done and analytical, that is within the range of error accuracy. Experimentation results are done, and if it does not deviate beyond certain value, then that has been used actually. So already all cases we have assumption and the errors are there. The errors are within certain reasonable accuracy. When experiment is done, that is accepted.
Okay, sir. So that error also within the range.
Yeah. Normally we see the accuracy. Normally, if you go for even research also, 10 to 15%, I think maximum accuracy we have within the theoretical and experimental error. If the error in experimental theory is beyond say 15 or say it is 20-25%, then it is not being validated. The analytical, there is issue in the analytical equations.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Dear faculty members, do you have any other doubts regarding this convection heat transfer? Okay, sir. Let me conclude and ending our lecture, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your immediate acceptance of our invitation to deliver the lecture on the FTP of 6 days FTP of applied thermodynamics, heat and mass transfer, and kinematics of machinery. It is an extraordinary presentation, sir. Really, we are gaining is more knowledge, and also we have some doubts, and that also to be clarified during your lecture, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if you are having any other FTP we are conducting, we give an invitation. If you are having a free means, you have to accept our invitation, sir. This is for our request, sir.
Okay, of course. So I think I have to thank again Professor Srinivasan and Professor Armugam, the head of the department and the institution, and all the faculties again for patiently maybe listening nearly for 1.5 hours. It is not so easy to again sit and listen. We can understand because we have been also in such situations. So I thank you for patiently listening for lectures. Even maybe if certain queries are not clarified, maybe if you can post me the queries later on, maybe even we can have a discussion, and through mail also we can clarify. And once again, I thank Srinivasan sir and Armugam sir for giving me an opportunity, wonderful opportunity to deliver the content to the exposure what I have in the subject. So though we have exposure, yet learning does not end. Learning is an ocean, and by FDP does not mean that I am an expert and I am giving all the puts. Your questions also makes me to think a lot of thing, and helps me to learn also. So in future also, if any kind of such is there, if you can, if I have time, I'll definitely try to give what best I can do, sir. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Armugam sir.
Sir.
You have to end on the meeting, sir.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.